We spend far too much time worried about what makes us different than the next person or better than the next person, and not enough time thinking about why we should respect the next person. We all have a story, an overarching theme that runs through our lives and makes us who we are. The problem is, we think that since each of our stories is different, there's not a lot of perceived value and shared struggle. But we have far more in common than we can imagine, and what motivates one person can certainly help us as well. The Third Lab podcast is about understanding, respecting, and appreciating the struggle that it takes to overcome immeasurable odds in order to reach your destiny. Join me as I interview and bond with some of the most inspiring and incredible people, diving into their why to get a full understanding of their being. Without each other, we have nothing. So let's go on this adventure together and take on the future with open minds and open hearts. Welcome to the Third Lab podcast. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Third Lap podcast. Excited to continue this journey with you all, and really excited to connect with the person that I have on the episode for today, my man Rictor Craig. Rictor is the co-founder and founding director of instruction at Statesmen Academy, founder at National Association of Black Male Educators, father, narrative shifter, and also a generational curse breaker. We'll definitely dive into all of that and really get a chance to better understand Rictor today.
You know, Malcolm, the reality is, and this is something that I recognized years ago, schools assume that adults know how to build relationships. And half of the folks who come into teaching are divorced. So we can't make that assumption. And we've got to start really teaching folks how to intentionally build not only relationships with kids, but relationships with each other. Like, right. You know, there's so many schools, and I mean, let's be truthful. Like, there's so many schools that are failing, not because of kids, they're failing because of adults, like adult issues. Adult issues are getting in the way, and adult issues are, you know, destroying schools. Like anything, and I'm a firm believer of this, any issue that you see inside of a school building, anything that you see that is unaligned to what a high quality school should be, it's adult created. It's adult created. Like whether it's kids running around, running amok, whatever, these things are all adult created issues. And once we get to the heart of adult actions and adult behaviors, we can help kids. Like you can't, a traumatized adult can't make a child whole. Like, because you are living your trauma out in a school every day. And Lord knows if your trauma came from your school experience. And so now you're in a school being re-traumatized by what kids are doing. And now you are now like we cannot give additional trauma to kids who already come to us traumatized. We should not be creating schools that are additionally traumatizing kids who are already walking into schoolhouses with their own trauma. Right. And here we are allowing adults to put their trauma on top of that by, you know, in all of these ways, seeing what we see it on videos, we see it like, you know, we see the way kids are being treated, and this is all adult, like these are all adult issues. And so we've got to create schools that are courageous to be able to name this stuff and talk about it and get adults to the other side of it so that we can help really build strong kids. Like we've got to be intentional, and it takes like deep relationships. It takes really getting to know families, really getting to know kids. And the only way you can do that is if you care. If you don't care, none of that's going to happen. And right. Some teachers aren't willing to put in that work. Some teachers aren't willing, and that's what it's going to take to do something drastically different. We cannot keep doing the same thing expecting a different outcome.
Yeah, that's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome. And so, you know, I also want to dig into sort of like, I would say, the second arm. I mean, I'm sure you have tons of arms, but like the second arm of your current legacy, which is the National Association of Black Male Educators. And so, looking at the overall teaching numbers for Black males, I mean, depending on what data you're looking at, anywhere from 2 to 4%, right?
Yeah.
And so 96 to 98% of teachers are not Black men. And that in and of itself is a difficulty, and something that you mentioned around like the adult trauma piece. And so another assumption that I found and continue to find it as not true is the assumption that because a person is a Black, specifically Black men, like Black men are going to do well in the hood because they're from the hood, right?
Yeah.
And like I know so many Black men that burned out working in really tough schools because that's not their environment. That's not where they came from, right?
Yeah.
Like they had a very different lived experience. And so when it came down to being able to relate to the students, they struggled.
Yeah.
Yes, we're Black men, but and I used to tell my kids, like, I never lived in the projects. I was never
Yeah.
homeless. You know what I mean? Like my mom sacrificed everything that she had to make sure that I had the steady necessities that I needed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I had people close to me that was, and so I got that level of empathy. My pops used to, he was on food stamps. I remember having the whole book of food stamps and busting it out at the store, but I never felt shame. Like it was nothing that I was ever ashamed of.
Yeah.
But I know folks who have never, ever, ever experienced that, right? And so that assumption of, okay, you're a Black man, I got to place you in a very tough school in the middle of an urban city. I think that like we're doing ourselves, not us specifically, but overall in education, we're doing ourselves a disservice. When I look at this 2%, I feel like this number could be so much higher if
Yeah.
we were more purposeful about how we hire Black men, how we retain Black men, the
Mhm.
culture that we're expecting them to assimilate into, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have a building that's 98% or at best 70 to 75% non-people of color, right?
Yeah.
What is the expectation of these men and ultimately these women to step into these places and be able to do this work? And so,
Yeah.
I really want to dig into now, really talking about the National Association of Black Male Educators, because that support is so important. And really building out that pathway. So Sharif El Mekki, who was out here with the Center for Black
Shout out to
Educator
Sharif.
Development. Yeah, shout outs to Sharif, man. I call him the godfather of Black education, but he's that dude out here. And with his organization, like they have something very similar to what yours talks about, which is developing high school and undergraduate student interest and awareness in the field of education. you
Yeah.
know I did this like quasi research paper which was around how to create more foundational pipelines for Black male educators.
Yeah.
Specifically, it starts with having these conversations with them in middle school, really, but definitely helping our students
That's it.
understand that education is a pathway for them, right? Like you wanted to be a lawyer, ended up in it. I was trying to rap, ended up in it. Like I know so many people, Black men specifically, that just ended up in education. It was never like, yo, I want to be a teacher. Like I talk to teachers all the time doing interviews and they like, yo, at 6 years old, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I
Mhm.
haven't talked to too many Black men that was the case. They felt the calling and they
Yeah.
knew it was time to transition into it, but it wasn't at 8. They knew that they wanted to teach. And so I
Yeah.
would love to hear from you. What are some of the ways that we as organizations, we as individuals can better support our Black men in this work? And if somebody is an educator or is at a point in their career where they're like, damn, man, I don't find this rewarding or fulfilling any longer,
Mhm.
where could I look or where should I look? What's your pitch to folks that like, yo, maybe education is the place for you?
That's a great question. And there are like a million ways I want to answer that. It's like a million things I have to say. I think first and
And
foremost,
sorry, it's a purposefully loaded question. So,
yeah, I
we'll go
know,
down the rabbit hole
I
like Alice,
know,
man. We'll get
I
there.
know, man. Like that thing was loaded. So I think the first thing that we have to understand is that although there is less than 2% of Black and brown men in teaching, the effort, so the issue that there were not a lot of Black and brown men in teaching, it began to be addressed years ago. And we have been successful. People don't recognize this. We have been successful into bringing Black and brown men into education. Black and brown men are becoming teachers at a higher rate than we ever have, at a higher rate than we ever have. The reality is Black and brown men are leaving this work at the highest rate, right next to white women. And so although we are bringing more Black and brown men in the work, which we need to bring a lot more Black and brown men in the work. And we've got to keep these brothers. We've got to keep them. They're leaving, and they're leaving for very, very, very specific and intentional and in a lot of ways, good reasons. Like they're very valid reasons. And I mean, it is the lived experience of Black and brown boys and men in schools. Like if you think about our experience as Black and brown boys in school, turn that into an adult that's a Black man in education. Like we're walking into doors and people don't think that we have the instructional and pedagogical chops to do the work. So they don't even look at us as teachers first. They look at us as facilitators of behavior first, because the thing that most Black men can do the best is help Black boys. And who do people need the most help with in schools? Black boys. And so, you know, we get into these spaces and we very easily and unintentionally get pigeonholed into deans, not even with a formal title, but because you can relate to the Black kids in the building, because you can get the Black boy to calm down, because you can get him to do his work, because in 30 seconds, you can put him in front of you and say, dude, come on, chill out. And he can go back into that room and be another person for you that he won't be for that teacher. Like they will easily use us for that and nothing else. And we won't be looked at as instructional experts. We won't be looked at, you know, as, you know, building experts for content, as opposed to, you know, building experts for culture. And so that is the story of many, many men. And if you aren't intentional about not making that your story, which I recognized that early on, and I didn't want to be that. Like I saw very quickly in my first year of teaching, because I had the quiet class where the kids were behaved and I wasn't putting up, you know, this is in Baltimore City and I was young. I mean, I started teaching at the age of 20 and none of my kids knew it. And this is in Baltimore City. And at the time I was teaching, you know, 11th and 12th grade. My first teaching job was I taught English, but I also taught 11th and 12th grade SAT prep. And many of my students were like 19 years old. They were like, and they didn't even realize, like, I'm your age, and I'm teaching you. But I was so mature that I could pass it off. I looked really young, and they were like, yo, you gotta be. And I'm like, no, I'm not your age. I'm grown. And so I kind of faked it because I was like just real mature. But I mean, we were all in this together. Like we were the same age. And I mean, to see, like they would walk into the classrooms and see that I had the orderly class. My kids are learning, you know, we're having a good time. There's no disrespect. I'm respecting them. They're respecting me. And they just automatically thought that I was a good teacher. I hadn't been trained. I didn't go to school for teaching. I wasn't an education major. And so, you know, I learned a lot in my Master's of Arts and Teaching program, but it didn't prepare me. It didn't prepare me for teaching. Nothing prepares you for teaching like getting into that classroom. And so, you know, I actually, you know, I would like to formally apologize to all of the kids that were in my class the first year, because I was a horrible teacher, horrible. But leadership thought I was the bomb because I had an orderly classroom. And, you know, that is the life of a Black male educator, unless you are purposely, you know, fighting to become more effective as an instructional, you know, as a pedagogue. And, you know, if you're not pushing to be that, and if you're not pushing to be seen as that, nobody will see you as that. And so I had to make some very intentional moves in my career to be seen as an expert in content, to be seen as an expert in pedagogy. And that is why I am where I am today. And if I did not have a black mentor in this work, shout out Sean Hartnett, who's also CEO, founder of Statesmen, who was my mentor. He was able to, as a Black man in this work, say, no, you're not a dean. No. Yes, help them with that behavior and then say, okay, so now I got to teach you how to do this as the teacher, because you don't want to be pigeonholed as that dean. And a lot of times Black men get into the dean role and they can never get out. You know, they want to become an assistant principal, they want to become a principal, and they can never get out of that dean role because folks won't see them as any more than a dean. And, now they have to prove that they're smart and prove that they can. And, long gone are the days where principals are, behavior managers. That's not what principals are anymore. Years ago, you could get away with having a principal that had good school culture. But now we need principals that are moving student achievement. We need principals that are closing the achievement gap. So you got to know instruction. You got to know, pedagogy. And a lot of Black men are not getting access to that because people don't see them. And especially if you're in a building where you're the only, male of color, and you've got to fight your way out of, that conundrum. So I see in many ways that, and that's the reason why NABME was born, that I did not see any organization at the time that was supporting Black men in this work. Like, had I not gone out and found, like, I searched for people who could help. Like, I just always came from the school of thought that, to have support while you're doing it just makes you even more effective. And so as a teacher, it was natural for me to find all of the really good teachers in the building and just start latching on to them, and all of the really good teachers in my building at the time were women. So I started latching on to them, watching what they did, like watching instructionally, how do you make up your classroom? How do you design it? And so I just got really good at that. And then people saw that and more people wanted that. And so, that's really what pushed me to become a leader. But even becoming a leader, I wanted support. Like, I didn't want to go into that thing cold turkey and fail. I don't like to fail. Let me rephrase that. I love to fail because I learned from it. I don't like the feelings, the emotions that come along with a failure. And I love to win. I love to win. And so I try to put myself into positions where I can learn as much as I can so that I can be in a position to win. And so if men of color are not thinking about that as they navigate their schools and as they navigate, their lived experiences in education, we can easily, get pigeonholed in that, because you're right. Black men are not a monolith. And people look at Black men as the one size fit all answer for Black boys in schools. And that's not necessarily the case, because we didn't all grow up the same. We don't all have the same lived experiences. I used to tell my boys all the time, like you, Malcolm, like, I ain't grow up in the hood. I ain't grow up in the hood. Like, I cannot talk to you about how to navigate the hood because I didn't grow up in it. But what I can help you do is make the best decision possible. I can tell you if it sounds stupid. I can tell you if it sounds crazy. I can sure enough tell you if what you're doing right now is not going to be a benefit to where I know you want to be. And so as a Black man, I can relate to you in that way. As a Black boy, I did many stupid things, so I can help you navigate, all those situations, which is that is, what our Black boys need. They need that familiar face. You don't have to have gone through their same experiences, but you can at least, give them what sounds stupid, you know what sounds crazy, and you can help them navigate that. But Black men don't just automatically sign up for that. And I talk to men all the time about that. Like, I didn't sign up to be a mentor. I didn't sign up. Yeah, you didn't. But we often don't sign up for what we're needed for the most. And so, sometimes we just have to do that work because it calls us and it is necessary. But that's not, what all Black men are. And so, we've got to be very careful about that. And I say it all the time, like, representation matters. Representation matters. We want to keep more Black and brown men in this work. Let's get more Black and brown men leading this work, that know what these Black and brown men are experiencing, and they know how to keep them. The data shows, as Black and brown teachers, we're far more likely to stay in spaces where we have affinity, where we have an affinity group. All we need is just at least one more Black or brown man in that work with us, that we can do the work with. And so we do have to bring more Black and brown men in this work. We've got to be equally as intentional about keeping them. We've got to be equally as intentional about growing them. growing their, their capacity in instruction, their capacity in pedagogy, all of those. We got to grow the whole teacher and not just, put them in the building and say that's enough.
You're listening to the Third Lap Podcast with Mal Davis.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of the work ends for so many people is we identify them, we hire them, we place them, but there's really no intentional pathway of development. We're not sitting down with a lot of these young Black men and brown men and like, okay, where do you see yourself going? How do we fit into your long-term trajectory of what you want to become? You summarized my first year of teaching through this whole process, which was I was horrible. I was not very good. I owe my kids. So any of my students listening, I owe y'all an apology. Mr. Davis was not as strong at his pedagogy as he should have been, but I was really strong with the relationship management component. And it's funny because when you said it, it was like, shouts out to Caitlin Smith because she saw this in action, but people thought I had it on smash. I didn't know what I was doing, but my kids respected me. I respected my kids. And so we would get in there and we were learning together. I would make mistakes and be like, yo, Mr. Davis, that's not right. And we'll laugh and we'll move on. But just those moments, I'll never forget them, right? Like that left such a lasting impression on me. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to keep teaching. So I had to like pivot to elsewhere in education. But those experiences, I'll never forget. And if I could had at that point continued to teach, I would have. Like that would have been the reason for me to keep going. But there wasn't a lot of encouragement in regards to learning my pedagogy better. Wasn't a lot of encouragement to dig into the content more. It was really, this kid is acting up, I'm gonna send them to your class. Like they used to call me the bad kid whisperer. And I remember years ago when I first moved to Philly, Sharif and his boys out here had an event where we all came together. I forget, it was at the school district of Philadelphia in their like main hallway. And so they were just talking about the experiences of Black male educators. And one of the folks sharing said that, he became the behavioral manager in his building his first year, right? Like as a teacher, but was also tasked with like wrangling all the kids. And I mean, when I tell you damn near, if not every hand, 90% of the hands in that room went up when they asked, like, is this your same experience? And so, it just goes back to people are not having these conversations. People are not asking the right questions. The information is out there, right? Like anecdotally, you can go to almost any Black male educator and whether or not they are good with relationships and they are good with disciplinary methods or whatever it may be, that's their job and it becomes their job really quickly. I was even called the bad kid whisperer and I was like, come on, man, like I don't believe in bad kids, so I can't really co-sign that. And you really spoke about like that experience between being a Black boy in a school and then coming back as a Black male in a school. It's like me going to hospitals. I hate them. Always had negative experiences at hospitals, seeing people pass away. My own experiences with like a bad stomach and being hospitalized numerous times in my whole life. Like walking in that building, it's like, yo, I got to get out of here. And so I can only imagine for people who had those really negative experiences in school, like mine was negative, but it wasn't to the point where I couldn't be in this work. But there are people that really were traumatized numerous times throughout their educational career.
And we wonder why we can't convince them to be teachers.
Facts, right? Facts.
Yep. And so we've got to, like, it starts early. Like we're talking about, getting them interested in high school. The reality, Malcolm, is by high school, 99% of those Black and brown boys don't want nothing to be like. You talk about teaching, they're like, I don't even like school. What you talking about? When we come working this? No. Right. And that's why that's why we're doing the work that we're doing, because we've got to change like our boys' perception of what school is. Then we can interest them in becoming teachers. Like their lived experience in elementary school is bad. And we're trying to convince them 9 years later, like 9 years of that. And then you're coming along and saying, hey, teaching is dope. Like what? Like, come on, dude. Like I'm miserable. I'm miserable as a student. And you want me to come back and convince other people to do this? No. And so like, we've got to change. This is the whole trajectory, man. Like we'll get better. We'll get more folks that want to be, teachers because they had good experiences as kids. And many of our Black and brown boys, they've not had good experiences.
Yeah, I mean, even for yourself, going to a really high performing established school, I mean, I won't say that you had a negative experience. That's not what you said,
But it could have
but
been.
yeah,
It could have been.
easily,
It could have
easily,
easily been. Like if I
easily.
wasn't, if I was anything different than who I was, I could have easily just been like, you know what? Expel me. I'll go to my neighborhood school.
Or
I'll
if your
go.
parents were different and they were
Yeah,
cool with you going to the neighborhood school because
right,
they didn't see the value in you continuing to persist at that school, like maybe
right.
we're not even having this conversation, right? Because like that trajectory is different, man. I'm sure there are folks that went to that neighborhood school in Chattanooga that are still right in that same neighborhood that have never taken off and never really searched for or purposefully sought out their goals or their vision in life, man. It's just funny how like one or two instances, even your teacher pushing you to get college credit, right? Like all of those things play such a huge integral role in how we vision or envision school. And to your point,
And
you have
Malcolm,
kids starting in kindergarten with just negative experiences.
and here's the crazy thing. It's those moments of empathy and folks caring that changed my life. Like I've gone back
Yeah,
and spoken at my school on numerous occasions.
nice.
Like the principal who expelled me, we laugh about like those situations now. And the teachers who were there when I was a student who are still there, and I go back and speak, like we talk about,
Wow.
the situations that I was, and I've apologized to many of the teachers that I had in middle school. But had they not done that, my life would be something totally different. And that's the reason why, our boys turn out so well, because I understand that. But if I've not had, like, if I don't understand that, or if I'm not thinking about that, I can easily make a decision for a child that ends them up in the predicaments that we see so many of our kids in. And it's because people are not understanding, people are not empathetic, they are responding to a behavior and not to a human. And they are seeing boys, black and brown boys, as a behavior, and they're removing the boy because they don't think that the behavior can be removed. And a behavior can be changed. Any behavior can be changed. It takes time, it takes consistency, it takes passion, it takes all of that. It takes me working through my frustration of this boy still not having what I want him to have, and saying, you know what, he's gonna get it one day. He's gonna get it. It's that belief. And people don't walk in with the belief that a kid can truly change, and they give up. And then when they give up, so does the kid. Like, what do we expect? They're children. And so, we've got to create school spaces that that don't give up on kids, no matter what. Like and our parents will tell you, we do what we call a threshold. And it's so funny because it gets like, you see, and I tell people this all the time, and especially in the elementary grades, you never really see the true behavior of a child until you put something really difficult in front of them. And how they react emotionally and behaviorally to that difficult task, that's the child that you get. That's who you see. And for Black boys, who have been in school spaces where they have been told they're not smart, they're not, they get in front of a really difficult math problem and they get angry, like angry. And, it might come out as joking. So now I want to turn the class into a joke because I can't do the math. Or now I want to fight or disrupt or whatever, and I can't do the math. And then you have, schools responding to the behaviors. And if, like, we do what we call a threshold on purpose. We want to see what behaviors you have. So, we got, all kind. I mean, this is fourth grade. So you get a kid who in another school building, because remember, our boys are coming to us in fourth grade, so they've had years to do what's really got good to them. We call, it's done got good to you, where you do a behavior and it gets you the results you want. And so that's got good to you. And so you'll see a boy come to us, we're like, do problems, do 1 through 10. He gets to 3 and it's getting real difficult, so he, throws the paper off the table, he might flip his chair over, all of that. And, he starts to have this fit. And, we'll, if he's on the ground, we'll get on the ground with him. The fit, he has the fit. And then after the fit, we say, pick the paper up 1 through 10. Like, the fit is not going to get you out of the work. And that's what's gotten them out of the work, at these other schools because people don't want to see the fit. And so instead of seeing the fit, they say, okay, let's just do 1 through 3. Just get to question 3. And see, that's not going to get you to college. That's not going to get you to college.
That's not gonna get you through life. You can't get a job like
do
that, raise a family like that, none
like
of that.
1 through 10. Have the fit, absolutely. And once you're done, I'm gonna slide this paper right back over to you, and then do 3 more and have another fit. And after that, I'm gonna slide this paper right back over, and then do 9 and 10. and then after that, we're gonna celebrate. And so, like, we've got to think differently about how to respond to what we see. And if we truly believe that kids can be better than what we see right now, and I think that's where people get caught. They see a kid for what they see in the moment, and they don't go any further. No, I see you with the cap and gown on, brother. We fighting through this little thing, this fit, because then at that point, the fit doesn't mean as much to me because I see you graduating. I see you as a grown man who's giving back to society and not taking from society. Like, I see that. So I'm gonna fight you through this fit. Because I truly believe once we get to the other side of it, you'll be something far better than this fit. And every time it's never let me down. Never let me down. Never has it let me down. And so, I'm gonna continue to fight. And so we need people in buildings that are gonna fight for that and not fight to get kids kicked out of school, not fight to get kids put in ISS or fight to get kids locked up or fight. Like, we're fighting for the wrong stuff as adults in school buildings. We've got to fight for kids and what they truly need and stop fighting against them. Like, we're fighting against them right now. We should be fighting for and with them in this work. And so, our boys know we fight for them. And so they'll do anything for us. Like, they know we're going to fight no matter what. If that means I got to fight your mama and her belief, that you'll never be anything because all she sees is your dad in you when she looks at you. And so she screams you down every morning because she sees your father in you. And if I'm not a courageous leader and I don't sit your mom down and say, you are going to send your son to jail if you keep seeing his father in him. Like, if I'm not having that level of conversation with families, then I'm not doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm having the wrong fight. And so sometimes it means fighting the family. Sometimes it means fighting the teacher and saying, absolutely not. You won't do that. Absolutely not. You will not see him for that behavior. We will not send him home. No, he's not being suspended for throwing that chair. No, he's not going home for that. He's going to come pick the chair up. I'm going to talk to him about, how I'm going to walk him through this situation. I'm going to stand right next to him as he apologizes to you, because that's what it takes right now. That doesn't mean his apology is ingenuine. That means he's learning how to apologize because nobody ever taught him. And so, we've got to do that work and I call that heart work. We got to do the heart work in buildings and stop responding technically to adaptive problems. We spend a lot of time, having technical responses. The technical response is it is the process or the procedure. Like, if you have, for example, if you have a class of 10 disruptive students, the technical response is to remove the student. That's the technical fix. The adaptive response is to get at the heart of why they're disruptive. Are they disruptive because they finished their work and the work is too easy? Are they disruptive because they don't know how to do the work? And so once you address that, not only do you get a calm class, but you get a calm class with the kids who were the problem in it. And now they're no longer the problem. That's the adaptive fit. And so we've got to change mindsets. And we spend far too much time changing systems when we should be changing mindsets.
Hey everybody, so I have some really exciting news. The Third Lab podcast is actually expanding, and so I'm in the process of putting together a co-authored book called The Third Lab: Transformational Stories of Life Experiences That Make Us Better. And this is a great opportunity for anyone that's looking to get published for the first time, or if you've been published before, this is a great opportunity to, well, not have to write a whole book yourself. And so if you're interested in learning more about the product, the program, the opportunity, feel free to reach out to me at maldavis21@gmail.com, or feel free to reach out to me through the socials for the Third Lab. Really excited about this program, really excited about this opportunity, and really excited for you all to come and join me. So again, if you have any questions, want to learn more, feel free to reach out to me at any time. Each one, teach one. We all learn together. Peace. Yeah, so the CEO of KIP Philadelphia, Jessica Cunningham Makoto, what's up, Jessica? She had a conversation around what you were just talking about now, which is like the heart component, where she gave an anecdote of transitions during elementary school lunch. And so seeing that the kids were bugging out, right? Like these transitions were a hot mess. And so she said that usually how you would approach that is very like punitive measures, right? Like detention, suspension, whole class got to go back to class. No more eating lunch. Y'all gonna eat in the classroom. I did that before. I had my kids eat in the class. They ain't know how to act, right? You can't
Nobody's going to lunch.
right. Nah,
Nobody's
come
going to
on, right,
recess.
right, exactly. And my eighth graders was sick, but like we gonna learn. Same way your coach makes you run laps. So anyway, she was like, they looked at it, and what they realized is that too much time was elapsing between when the students were released from lunch and when they were supposed to be in their class. And so she was like, looking at this,
adult
it's
issue.
always the adults. It's always the adults, right? And so she was like, when we looked at that, we addressed the system. We created a better way for kids to transition, staggering transitions. The behaviors practically dropped to zero at that point.
Yeah.
And that, like you said, so oftentimes we're looking at like the end result of the behavior, not the root cause, right? If we're not addressing the root, that's with anything. We can't change it, right? We could keep clipping the leaves on the tree. If we want the tree going, we got to cut it, right?
Yeah, the
Right.
problem will
Exactly. Never be fixed.
Continuously be revisiting this.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Who wants to continuously keep revisiting a problem? Like,
right.
And so that again, like we can't keep doing the same things expecting a different result. And if you don't have folks that are able to identify that, you're just going to have a school you're just going to keep churning out kids. And unfortunately, the race and demographic that always bears the brunt of those types of adult behaviors are Black and brown boys. Yeah, every single time. We bear the brunt of that. Like we're always getting disengaged. We're like, we're just dismissed. Like we're always getting, dissed in every sense of the word in education. We're at the last of the heap when it comes to everything in education except sports. And so, we've got to change that narrative. We got to change the way that people look at Black and brown boys in schools. We got to change the way that people look at Black and brown men in the work of education. We've got to change it. And the only way we do that is if we are making an intentional effort to have Black and brown boys and men seen differently in the work, which means that we've got to do things different. We've got to respond different. And we got to push folks who aren't thinking about that to respond different to Black and brown boys and men.
Absolutely. And so again, this is the Third Lap podcast. I'm here talking with Rictor Craig about his experiences and his career in education, just his overall, just really transformative philosophy towards how we can make this a more inclusive and equitable process for Black and brown men, to ultimately benefit our Black and brown boys, like you've mentioned several times, who are usually the first ones. Like you said, I love they're getting this everything, right? Like, we catch the brunt of it, and then oftentimes there's really no safety net in place for us to have a soft landing, right? Like we landed right on our asses, man, every single time. And eventually, you don't want to keep getting up because it's that defeating process. And if you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, if you don't have people involved in your life, if you don't have teachers that care and are willing to take that extra step to ensure your success, I mean, you kind of just swimming alone, man. And, a lot of times people swim alone, they end up drowning, bro.
Yeah.
And so, Rictor, I would love to really get into your why. Like, what is the reason for this passion? I mean, you're clearly an intelligent dude. You could have and possibly still can do so many different things, but you're very clearly dug into where you are right now. You're very clearly invested in making sure that our Black and brown boys have the best education outcomes and opportunities, and that our Black and brown men are transitioning into this work and feeling supported and feeling loved on, much like our students should be, right? And so, yeah, man, I would just love to hear, why, yo? I always ask this question. We can do anything. What keeps us grounded where we are, and keeps us pushing forward. So yeah, man, what's your why?
I mean, our black and brown boys deserve it, man. Our black and brown boys deserve to see better. Our black and brown men deserve to see better. Like we deserve to be seen as brilliant. Um, like my brother and myself and my best friend, we started an organization last summer called Brilliant Black Boy, and it is to change the narrative for it. Like we our opportunities just we don't get to see opportunity because people see us as something else. And so, I want people to be able to get all of the opportunities that I had. I have had so many opportunities simply because people saw something in me and they pushed me enough to bring it out. And they built relationships with me to show me that they cared enough to bring that out. Like the people that I listened to in school, because I didn't have to listen to them. And I was very clear. Like I listened to the folks I wanted to listen to, and I didn't because I was smart. Like, I could very, very, in a very succinct way, tell you, what I was going to do, what I was not going to do, and why. And, the folks that I listened to were people that showed me that they cared. They told me that they cared. I mean, the Mr. Carell, shout out to Mr. Carell, my social studies teacher in high school. I mean, like he would pull me to the side. And he's like, I'm not letting you fail. Like, I see you making these mistakes. And this is a white man. And he's like, I see you making these stupid mistakes and you're not going to keep doing it because you are far better than that. Get yourself together. And I'm sitting there like, yes, sir. Like, all right. And, Miss Self, shout out to Miss Jean Ann Self, who was my English teacher. And, we're reading Scarlet Letter one day and, she hears the passion in my voice and she's like, dude, like, have you ever considered being an English major? Like, you write well, you speak well, you read well, like you have a way with words that I've never seen. And that's the reason why I majored in English. Like, that's the reason why I love literature and love, the things that I love to this day. And had they not seen that and pushed me, I would not be who I am. And I wish I would have had a Black man in school to do that. And because I did not have that, and I had other people stand in the gap, shout out to all those folks. Like I defined that for myself much later in life. And boy, the power I would have had, but beyond the power that I had, the power that I would have had with a Black man in education, pushing me and getting me in the right places. And I don't even think I would have been through that middle school roller coaster that I went through. I'm thankful for it, but I would have much rather not had gone through those things. And so it is experiences like that, and just seeing what all of the boys who I've mentored along the way, like to see the amazing men that they've become in the world, to see the dope stuff that they're doing. I get the amazing pleasure to travel around the world all the time, and no matter where I go, I get to see kids that I've taught, and they're newscasters on television, and doing dope stuff in the fashion industry and in the sports industry, and to just be able to see them and talk to them and go out to dinner and get my dinner paid for, and just to be able to connect with kids and for them to tell me the difference that I've made. Like that for me keeps me going. To see the shift in families, to see the differences in the boys' lives, like from 4th to 6th grade, like just in the 2 years that we, the 3 years that our school has been open, and to see like just the dramatic shifts that our school environment is making on our boys and their families. Like that's why I do this work. And I think my biggest why is my daughter. I got a 9-year-old daughter who I want her to see what hard work gets you. I want her to see, how to build legacy, how to become like really, really good at something, and do something passionate. We talk about passion all the time, and I do a lot of what I do for her so that she can see that and see a model of that and be able to, make decisions about what she wants to do later on in life too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I mean, I feel like so much of your motivation can be gleaned from your story and from the work that you do, but also never want to assume, right? Because people's why is very, very specific to them. And I also oftentimes I feel like we don't ask that question,
Yeah.
right? Like we see people doing these amazing things, but we never ask them why, right?
Mhm.
Like, you could be committing your time to stealing from the Black community,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like, so many of us, like, there are so many people that look like us that are agents against our own progress, right? And so, I always want to understand why people have that service mindset. Why are people in the positions where they are? Because I
yeah,
feel like that ultimately anyone listening can then kind of find themselves in that too, right? And like, this for me is all about, as the listeners dig in, there will be somebody that creates a school. Maybe someone's listening to this and they're in the process of creating a school. They didn't think to talk to the neighborhood first. They
yeah,
didn't think to pull up to the community and really ask those questions. And so I'm hoping through hearing this, they understand that that's a short-sighted effort and endeavor that ultimately probably either will lead to your school closing because you won't have the outcomes that you're looking for, or you're going to have to take that time at a different time and place to
yeah,
then figure this out and then workshop it, right? Like, take that time and be intentional. And if you're saying that you want to have an inclusive environment for Black and brown male educators specifically, understand from a cultural standpoint what that means, right?
yeah,
Like, really dig in and ask the questions, what do you need? How can we help you? Where do you see yourself going? And
yeah,
then really follow through. Because, just having people in the building for the sake of having them, that's traumatic, right?
yeah,
Like, I've had so many leaders that I saw not invest in their Black male educators specifically, but then throw their hands up and discuss when those same people leave. They can't understand why. And, thankfully at KIP, we do a lot in regards to retention, and shout outs to Diana Philo, who, really does a lot for like leadership pathways with us. So
yeah,
people know there are opportunities, right? But that glass ceiling is so real, man. When you look at leadership, it's funny because the dominant white women dominate the work, but white men dominate leadership, right?
right.
And so you see the same exact homogenous approach at
Yep,
the very top. Super problematic.
yep,
And so, we see it. And Rictor, I'm so glad that again you're in your process of continuing to build places for us, right? And for us to succeed, for us to understand our power, for our younger iterations of us to understand their importance, because like, if they don't, they can't become us, right? If there aren't those purposeful interventions, neither of us are here. And I wanted to shout out, Mr. Bill Gaines, Jean, what up? Jean Gaines' father, who was literally the only teacher in high school that intervened, the only Black male educator I ever had, K through 12. But, he intervened. He saw me going off the deep end in my sophomore year of high school and really pulled up on me and didn't let me quit. I
yeah,
passed his class, and that was one of the few classes I actually still did well in high school, and I always sing Mr. Gaines' praises. I look forward to having him on here. He probably doesn't even remember, right?
yeah,
Because he was leading with his heart. He probably remembered other students that had promise that went left and fell, right? And he did everything he could to lift me back up again. And I'll forever appreciate him for it, because he was literally the only person that did that. And my why is because I wanted to be that for other students. I want to be that for other people, because we all need to feel like somebody has our back, man. It's a cold, lonely life if you feel like you're in this by yourself.
yeah.
And so, Rictor, I appreciate you, man. And so as we get to the tail end of the podcast here, it's been a marathon, man. I appreciate you. It makes sense you in LA, you out there on the West Coast, because the marathon continued this afternoon, man. Because we've been on this joint for a minute. But
Right.
I appreciate your energy, dude. And so, this is the motivational thoughts for the people. My educators always love this, because this is your opportunity to stamp the learning. And any good educator is always going to stamp that learning, right? And so this is 2 to 3 minutes, Rictor, of you really just keeping it real. What's the message that you want people to walk away with when they hear your story? What is the things, or like 1 or 2, 3 things even, that you want them to walk away with?
I will. One thing I want people to walk away with, one thing from everything that I said. We create good schools with love. We create good schools with love. It's just that simple. We've got to do a much better job of loving on these babies. Not and here's the thing: we love them to death. We don't love them to dumb. We love them so that we can push them. We love them so that we can, leverage that relationship to get, to get them where we know they can truly be. And the only way we can do that is if they know that we care about them. Kids will not learn or do anything for folks that do not care about them and they do not believe care about them. And so if you are in education, you gotta love building relationships with kids. You have to love children. You gotta love their families. You gotta empathize. You gotta understand and get to know and understand where the kids are coming from. Get to know their struggle. Get to know what they love. Get to know what excites them, and use that. Like use all of that to close whatever gaps you need to close, whether it's relational, whether it's behavioral, whether it's instructional. All of that can be accomplished with love. All of it can be accomplished. And so my nugget is to love hard, love unapologetically, and push them, like hold high expectations, and push them to meet it.
And I could just tell that you top of the line A1 educator, because you said forget three of them. We're gonna stamp one thing, right?
One.
There ain't no need for the other two. We're gonna stamp one thing, make sure that people don't get confused.
That's it. I
I
don't want
love it,
anybody to
man.
get confused about what I'm
Right.
saying. Love these babies, love
Yeah,
their families, love one
absolutely.
another, love the adults in the building too,
Mm.
because that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, and the piece that you added, the second two pieces, right, around loving the families, loving each other, something that I don't see a lot. And the best school communities, oftentimes you see this synergy happening of communal respect and love.
Yeah,
And the dopest schools, that's the case, right? The
yeah.
schools where like, yo, I'm just here to cash this check. We're not really communicating beyond, our regular PD times and days. It could be some dope stuff happening in there, but that's not the secret sauce, right? We looking
Yeah.
for that secret sauce. We're looking for that stuff that is going to be transformational and revolutionary in regards to education, not just recycling the wheel.
And here's the thing, Malcolm, relationships, and although it sounds easy when I say love on these babies, like relationships are hard. Relationships are hard. It's much harder than teaching. It's much harder than being a great dean. Relationships are hard. They make songs about it. Like relationships are difficult, man. And so like you've got to be in it for the long haul, because kids are fickle. You could be working with a kid for 3 years and then they say one thing that just crushes your, I ain't never liked you anyway. And in that,
Especially middle schoolers,
I'm
bro.
telling
Middle
you,
schoolers are ruthless.
and in that moment, they can crush your soul. Like, and you can be like, you know what? Okay, I ain't gonna never fool with you again. And if we do that, we miss out on, what the kid really needs, because they're just saying that in the moment to hurt you because they want to hurt you in the moment. And it doesn't mean that they want to hurt you for a lifetime. And so we've got to go beyond that. Relationships are hard and we got to stay the course. We got to stay the course and do the real adaptive work, to get the dramatic shifts that we want to get, the dramatic changes we want.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that you said about like standing next to the child as they apologize, and it doesn't mean they don't believe in what they're saying as much as
Yeah,
they are learning how to apologize,
yeah,
right?
man.
Like the practice of apologies is so important. And there are adults that don't know how to apologize, that
I
will do
mean,
100 things wrong and will never acknowledge it a moment of
never,
the day, right?
never.
Exactly. And so Rick, I really appreciate that. Like you said, love on each other, love on the students, love on the families, but always lead with love. And you mentioned before, has never led you wrong. I can say the same, has never led me wrong. Especially working with students, with people, love lives and all of that, it gets complicated, right? But when you're talking about students, you're talking about growth in regards to academics, and personally, you'll never go wrong loving on our kids for sure. And
That's right.
so, what are some books that you would suggest for our reading list or Audible? I've actually opened this up now, so it could be books, movies, TV shows, entertainment. I just want folks to, what are the things that you interact with that bring you joy?
Yeah, I'm reading. Actually, I started reading a book that I found on my brother's desk, and it's right here because I started reading it earlier this week. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Like if you're trying to like break bad habits and things like that. And it's interesting enough, this is a conversation that we're having with our staff and our boys right now. Like, how do you replace bad habits with good ones? And man, this book is like really giving me some good nuggets. So that's definitely a book, that I've been reading. I'm rereading Courageous Conversations. That's a dope book that I've jumped into as well. Those are two of the books that I'm reading right now. And I'll say, Malcolm, you won't get many titles beyond anything that has to do with my research and my dissertation.
Oh man, focused on that.
I can give you a whole bunch of dissertations to look at.
Yo, listen, and offline, send them to me, man, because for me, I'm making a huge push now into educational policy.
Yeah.
Long term, I would like to run for public office, but I also know that like I need to be more steeped in the data and information necessary to like make the cognitive changes to people.
Yes.
Because systematically we can make tons of changes, but until people look at things differently and comprehend things differently, we'll just keep doing the same stuff. Like you said, insanity, same, doing the same actions, expecting different results. And so offline, yeah, man, send me anything. And that's to anyone listening, yo, you can hit me on my personal email or the Third Lap Podcast at gmail.com. Send me all the data and all the information. Let me dig into it because that's the stuff I love. And so, yeah, I appreciate you. Atomic Habits is a really good one. Courageous Conversations is a really good one. Appreciate you for that. And so, Rictor, where can people find you on social media? How can people interact with the National Association of Black Male Educators if they're educators in like the DC, Maryland, Virginia, DMV area, interested in learning more about Statesmen College Preparatory Academy for Boys? Yeah, man, where can people find you?
So for me personally, you can find me on Facebook under my name, Rictor Craig. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram at THEE Principal Craig. Those are all my socials. I will tell you, Statesmen College Preparatory Academy for Boys, we are looking for phenomenal educators, like all the time, passionate folks who want to change the lives of Black and brown boys. You can find us on Facebook under Statesmen College Preparatory Academy for Boys, on LinkedIn under the same name, on Twitter under the same name, on Instagram at Statesmen Boys. For my nonprofit, the National Association of Black Male Educators, you can find us on Facebook under our name. You can find us on Instagram at NABME Inc., NABMEINC. And yeah, those are many ways that you can get in contact with me or either one of the organizations that I serve.
Awesome, brother. And I just added you on Instagram. I see you starting in front of the Land Rover, man, doing big man things. I see you, bro. Yeah. So I also will post when when your episode comes out, I'm gonna post links to your website for the National Association of Black Male Educators and also links to Statesmen. And then I'll have your social media posted as well so people can reach out to you. All I can say is, man, connect with Rictor, especially if you're in education, specifically a Black male educator. Rictor so many times has just, and I want to thank you now that I have you on here, man. I have put up a post about I'm looking for, it's been hard for me to find mentors, just period. And you were one of the first people to hit me like, yo, you always got me as a resource. And, since the moment we first connected through Selected, that was like 3 years ago, if not longer. We've been rocking ever since. You came out here with your brother. We got breakfast out here in Philadelphia. Rictor, man, you just an all around great dude. Your brother was an all around just dope dude. It's been a pleasure to get to know you personally and professionally and to see your legacy and your impact continue to grow. Can't wait to call you Dr. Craig, man. It's gonna be soon. We're gonna call you Doc Craig, gonna get right. And so yeah, man, we're here at the end. Any last words you want to share with folks listening?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you, Malcolm, for having me on today and talking about. I always thoroughly enjoy talking about education and my passion. And just for the listeners, God, man, keep going, and keep learning, no matter what field you're in, whatever you're doing, even if it's not education, like become really good at that thing. Like find passion in whatever you do, find joy, find love in whatever it is that you do, and like go hard.
For sure. I'm 100% a person that's all about finding joy and love in what you do. And I'm actually going to tap you again, Rictor, in the future. My wife challenged me the other day. We were talking about public education and she asked me like, well, you don't think it works the way it is now? What is it like? How does it look? What changes need to be made? And I was like, yo, I can't answer that question, but I'm gonna tap me a couple brothers and sisters that can, and we're gonna get on the pod. We're gonna get on SteamYard and we're gonna go hard. And so I'm gonna hit you back Yeah, my brother, to really get into that conversation around how do we intentionally become way more revolutionary in regards to our public education system, specifically with our young Black men and Black women, because there are changes that have to be made that just aren't, right? And like, let's put it out there. If people pretend like they don't know, we're going to use that episode as an opportunity to get that information out there to the people, man. And so, as always, Rictor, we're going to definitely stay in contact. I look forward to catching up. I will actually be able to this fall, all things going correctly. I'm gonna finally get a chance to swing through Statesmen and say what's
Yeah,
up, man.
please
Haven't
do.
been yet, so I'm gonna come and holler at you. But this is another episode of the Third Lap Podcast. Each one teach one. We all learn together. Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Third Lap Podcast. This is your host, Mal Davis. Please visit thethirdlappodcast.com for more information about the podcast, about our guests, and also to see our reading list. You can find us at The Third Lap Podcast on LinkedIn and Facebook, at Third Lap on Twitter, and at third_lap_podcast on Instagram. If you know anyone that would be great to be featured on this show, please reach out to our host, Mal Davis. He's always looking for interesting people to learn more about them and to talk about their pathway. Thank you so much again. Have a good one.